But I've heard, like, as far as like protection stuff, I've heard a lot of different things. I've heard that, words have power, and saying mantras, mantras that speak to you. Again, it speaks of the intent. Mantras that speak to you, just like people use prayer. You can use other things like mantras or sayings, or you sing a song that makes you feel a certain way, or makes you feel peaceful or stronger or not afraid, whatever. I've heard that speaking things out loud is more powerful than saying them just in your head.
I have put little black like onyx triangles in the corners of the house, like to create a grid, almost like in my head of you can't come in here.
At different points in my life, when things got really kind of creepy in places that I was in, I was always looking for something. There I am. Looking for something to help. There are a lot of really extremely cheesy spiritual protection books out there, and I actually own like 4 or 5 of them, unfortunately. And then I've donated them to the library and thought some other poor fool is gonna look at this and think it's gonna help. And I found this one, and there's things in here that are like, there are things in here that are over the top, but there were a lot of things that seemed like they made sense and that they were kind of practical. And I liked the way that it was written from the perspective of somebody who has had experiences like a lot of us have had before, and went and sought help for them and didn't get the help that they were looking for, and crossed cultures and crossed religions for help with the stuff that they were dealing with, and could not find any help. So started kind of observing patterns and figuring stuff out on their own, and will admit right in the book, like, I have no idea what these things are, so I'm just going to call them Negs. I'm going to lump them all together and call them Negs, as in negative energies, right? And I don't presume to know enough about any of this to be able to label them. So I'm using the word Negs. The author's using the word Negs so that people know what he's talking about when he's writing about them. And then he'll talk about techniques that he discovered either by accident or that he actually did find when he was seeking help, like one little nugget here, one little nugget there, that seemed to calm things down and bring him a little bit of peace. And one of the things that he brought up was loud music. And that's why, so that's why, like, that's what made me think of that. So has anybody else ever gridded their property? Gridded their apartment?
If you cleanse your house and you put those little tiny, those sell them even online, pyramids in the corners of your house, it's like, I fill the house with light after that. Like, I ask all things that are good and anybody who protects us or beings of light, and sometimes I'll visualize a almost like a string of light to a dimension of protection, and I allow them to fill the house, but no one else is allowed to come in, and they're supposed to keep the light on this side of that grid.
Combat Psychic Attacks, Evil Spirits, and Possession by Robert Bruce. Okay, so I'm looking for this stuff online, and I'm just like, oh, come on. So then I finally found a site that will let you read like a chapter or two or a couple pages, right? And I'm just like, huh. So like there's stuff in here that I think a lot of us end up naturally doing that in the discussion that we've had, I feel like helps. What's really interesting is the very first page past the introduction it's called the core affirmation, right? And it's something that I have used before once I read this, and it's something that like kind of gets me out of the fear place and gets me into a place where I can say, either I'm nuts and I just watch too many horror movies, or there's something here that shouldn't be here. And if something's here that shouldn't be, and before I'm at the place where I could bring myself to say that because I'm in terror over what I'm vibing, it's I am loved, and I am worthy, I am safe, and I am free, I am powerfully protected, and I am master of my body and ruler of my mind. I'll take a shot of this and I'll put it up in our group so that, you know, everybody can see it and use it. And I say it out loud. I say it out loud when I'm in the shower, because apparently water does a lot. According to this particular individual, for him, it worked really well. And his observations are bizarre. But his observations are that when he's been bothered by really bad things that he calls negs, and I'm reading this and I'm just like, Art, what are you trying to say to me? You know what I mean? I'm just like, so he talked about like running a hose and actually jumping over the hose. And he'll say right in the chapter, like, I am aware this sounds insane, but for whatever reason, it's almost like these things cannot see the way that we see. And they cannot see that there is an end to the hose with the water coming out of it. So they will sense the water and they cannot cross over it, which, you know, it goes back to the conversation that we're having of, I really do believe that somewhere down the line, we're going to know what these energies are that some of us can feel. Thing is, in this first chapter, he gives you a quick start guide. And that core affirmation again is, I am loved, I am worthy, I am safe, I am free, I am powerfully protected, I am master of my body and ruler of my mind. In the book, he talks about the way that the really bad things can kind of take a grip is first in your mind. You know how a mouse can get into absolutely any little crack? They can squeeze their body through any little crack. Same idea, only it's in a physical or mental or spiritual weakness. So you could be physically ill and that is almost like an open door.
Well, have you ever noticed that a lot of the people who say they were like possessed by a demon think they died at some point in their life? Even Dr. Greer says that he thinks that the reason why he's so in touch with the other side is, not that I always believe him, but he said that he died when he was 17 or almost died. And when he came back, he didn't know consciously, but he felt that he knew that there was more. And that's why he believed in extraterrestrials. But he also meditated religiously. So some people, I don't know, Steve, if you could back me up on this. Some people, like I think, believe in the Hindu culture, open themselves up to stuff like that because it makes you more powerful, but not like possession is what we would see a demon taking you over, but more or less like allowing the power of a god inside of you to give you the strength to do something. And that to them would be more of a strength, not a weakness.
I'll tell you a little story about that. Because when I was working on my master's thesis, it was about Hindu spirituality. That's, you know, comparing Catholic spirituality and Vaishnava Hindu spirituality. That's my chosen field. The one day we were sitting there talking, and I just asked him, I was like, Father, when you were in India, did you see anything weird? Like, did you see anything related to like ghosts or demons or anything? And he sat there for a second and he was like, you know, there were 2 times that I saw something. And of course, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm like, you got to tell me. So he goes, I was in South India. I was in a region where people are very aware of the bhoots. You know, a bhoot is a Hindi word for a ghost. It comes from a Sanskrit word that just means like a living thing. You know, like all of us are bhutani. You know, we're all living in body or spiritual beings, whatever. He goes, so I was in country that was very backwatery, that was very superstitious. This would have been, I think he did his doctorate in the 70s when he was there. 70s or 80s, I don't remember, a while ago. And he goes, there was one time where I was in the temple just for like darshan or whatever, for like the ritual and stuff. And something was different about it. Like somebody was in there who was like standing in the middle of the temple. And the way he described it was a guy dressed in drag who was like wailing and carrying on in all these different voices and shit. And he goes, when I walked in and I saw this, I said to one of my friends, I was like, what the hell is this? And they explained to me that this is someone who, as you said, has opened themselves up to receive the will of a goddess. And the goddess is speaking through this person. And he said it disturbed him to the point that when he got prasad, which is their version of communion, that he took it and he said he couldn't eat it. Like it really disturbed him. It was very, very strange. Then the other time he said he was at a different temple in a different area, and he goes, there was an exorcist who was there. And he explained that the way that they handle exorcisms will be the person will go to the possessed person, the possessed family, whatever. And the exorcist will speak to the possessing spirit and will say, why are you here? What is your business with this person and with this family? And he goes, the exorcist explained to me that most of the time, the spirit will be like a family member who didn't get a proper cremation. They didn't do the proper rites for the person when they died, and they're bitter about it. And the spirit clings around until that's taken care of. And the exorcist explained to him that the way they handle it is that they will ask the spirit, what do you want? What will make you leave? And the spirit will say, you need to do the correct funeral rite. You need to offer this much stuff in the temple to God. And then when you fulfill all these things, then I'll leave the person alone. And that's how they handle it, at least in that one particular branch. Because there are many, many branches of Hinduism, and they're all quite different. So that was a pretty cool story. And then, of course, I asked him, because he is a Jesuit priest, I said, Father, have you ever done an exorcism? And he goes, no, you couldn't pay me. There's no chance.
Wow.
So that was a pretty cool one.
If you're in dire straits and you don't have time to read the whole damn book, he was nice enough to give you a quick start guide. Okay, so his quick start guide is the mantra that we talked about, and he says, start repeating that core affirmation, say it aloud as much as possible, repeat it silently as you're falling asleep, turn on all the overhead lights, make your environment as bright as possible. I've heard that before too. Like when we went up to the Warrens, when we went up to meet Lorraine and do that whole thing. Her son-in-law has like the strongest flashlight that he could buy, because apparently like things don't like that bright of a light. I feel like my iPhone flashlight is blinding personally. Have blinded myself many times with it. So I'm kind of cool with that, but I would buy another flashlight if that's what it took. Make your environment as bright as possible. Sleep with the lights on while there's a problem. And placing a dark cloth over your eyes makes it easier to sleep. So, his philosophy is that these things don't like the bright light, which, that's
Well,
kind
when
of
we cleanse a house, we turn on every light in the rooms as we go to, and you leave them all on till you're done.
Take a long shower as soon as possible. Imagine you're being washed inside and out with electric violet or white light. He's big on electric violet light as opposed to white light. The running of a shower is your primary electromagnetic force defense against direct attack. Notice that you feel more peaceful under the shower, and use that piece to recite that core affirmation aloud and often. Use tiger balm or tea tree oil on your feet. Plenty of incense and essential oils in every room. I've heard that, like making things smell pleasant, making things sound pleasant or loud. Keep the incense burning, have plenty on hand. Start playing music loudly if the situation is bad. Soak your feet in a grounded bucket of warm, heavily salted water. Imagine murky bad energies being sucked out of your feet. If that's not possible, stand in or on top of running water of any kind, like a garden hose, a bathtub tap, something like that, a natural stream or creek. Get as much light and sunlight as possible and avoid dark, quiet places. Essential guidelines are break or minimize contact with potential sources of attack. If possible, make peace with sources of attack and diffuse the situation. You must get adequate food and sleep every day. Seek medical advice if you need help. Lack of food and sleep will increase your exposure to psychic attacks and worsen symptoms. Again, sleep and food are priorities. Avoid alcohol and recreational drugs. They'll make things worse. If your bedroom or home atmosphere is disturbed, fix it with light and incense or sleep elsewhere. Try sleeping on the couch or in another room, for example, or sleep in a motel or at a friend's home or camp out on your back lawn. This is interesting, develop a business-like attitude, and as far as possible, do not talk about the problem, particularly to people who might be critical or unsympathetic. Refer to the problem only indirectly as the thing is happening again. Like when we had, which is interesting, and I've heard that from like 3 or 4 completely different people before. Like, you know, if someone's having an issue, you make sure that you talk about it outside the place where the issue's happening. Like
Don't
you do
acknowledge
it
it.
in your car, or, you know, when you're not in your house, if you're having a problem in your house, because you don't want to feed it any energy, especially fear. Keep your mind off the disturbance and disturbing thoughts. Use the core affirmation and other positive thoughts and statements, mantras, prayers. Watch lots of happy movies. Listen to happy, uplifting music. Yeah, that's like the immediate guideline stuff, which is interesting.
See, it's interesting that he puts a lot of emphasis on the running water, because like that can apply to a lot of things. If there is one thing that all the movies and the TV shows always rip directly from legitimate ancient texts, it's the running water. And they always do it for like a goof or a gaff or a meme or a cringe or whatever, but it does have its legitimate place. Like, I was reading an entire text about things like vampires and stuff like that. One of the methods to get away is to jump across moving water. They can't follow you. And it's under the same guise as, like, if you don't want to be kidnapped by a fairy, wear your clothes inside out. It's a confusion measure. Like, it sounds goofy, but people have been doing this for hundreds of years.
Well, water
The
is
same
also
reason why you would
cleansing.
wear a mask on Halloween, so that you're unrecognizable. You don't want to be recognized. That's the whole point. So the water is like confusion. There are plenty of creatures that do the same thing with, you could throw rice or grains of salt or sugar at them. They have to stop and count them. So and some of them are specific in which way the water should be running in terms of electromagnetic fields and things like that. So I guess if you jump over a creek and it's going south instead of north, you might be fucked. But the fact that they mention the water a lot is very interesting, because it's not just about like the negative energies. It's about a lot of different things.
Well, when you ground yourself, though, too, scientifically, it's just like when you stand on the earth, it's negatively charged. And negative isn't bad. It's just we're getting positive ions from these machines we use and our lights and the electricity in our houses. So that may also rebalance you, maybe, and that's part of it. And they just knew instinctively.
When he talks about, you know, using music and stuff like that, and he talks about it doesn't have to be happy music. Like, same idea as bells, as wind chimes and bells. I actually have these they're like leather things that fit over your door handle, and they're in different Christmas shapes. Like, one's a candy cane, one's an angel, one's a rocking horse. Like, and I got them like a million years ago when I worked at Hallmark in college, and I brought them out last Christmas, before this past one. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm just not I have them on every door that leads in and out of the house, and also the basement door. And I just kind of feel like I kind of use them as a safety device in general. So if somebody broke in, I would hear the bell. You know what I mean? I would hear the jingling of the bell, you know.
Old school
like,
security system.
yeah, kind of like a little Home Alone rigged up security system. but also because the jingling of bells is supposed to be, or chimes is supposed to be really irritating to negative things. So if they really are there, I'm annoying them. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but the bell one is also a little bit confusing because there's a lot of lore that's like, you dead?
Okay, that
like-
one I never heard, weirdly.
Dogs howling when you know there aren't any dogs around.
Oh, right, and
Mhm.
the banshee crying and all of that.
Yeah, symbols of
Oh.
death or destruction to come. A lot of it is based in fairy lore. Oh, he gets bells out.
That? Some old hag screaming at me, "You're gonna fucking die!" Fuck that.
It's not
She just cries.
Oh my
She
god.
doesn't say that. She's not combative. She just cries, Max.
It's just like
I've
wailing.
always heard that the banshee is like, if you hear a scream, either you or somebody you know is
Is it sailors
That's
are gonna
the
die?
legend. That's
Isn't that like at sea?
no. It's an Irish legend. Like the banshee will show up and cry and wring a red cloth in running water as she's like screaming, crying, and it's supposed to let you know that someone in your family is gonna die.
Yeah.
That blows.
That's an old
Yeah.
it totally blows. It's an old Irish legend.
That's
Here's
disgusting.
my bells. These are from India actually. Ah,
That's a
Turn it
pretty
on me.
ring.
isn't that neat?
It's a
Yeah.
really high ring.
It's heavy as hell. It's made out of brass.
Sounds like light,
Angelic.
almost like glass.
See,
It's
this
awesome.
this might be terrible, but I do have a small story about my bells, my grandmother's bells. Towards the end of her life, she was sick in the dementia and was doing weird shit. And one of them, at one point, she had taken the bells off and for whatever reason was left unsupervised for about a good maybe 2 minutes. And you just hear violent shaking of the bells and she's going, "You won't get me, you're gonna get out." And I was just like, okay, she is seeing some shit and I'm gonna go over here and mind my business because I'm 10 and I don't know what's happening. But that's why I was like, I can't get rid of these now, because obviously she legitimately had believed in them and was like, this is going to protect me. I will not ever. The only people who are going to get these bells are my kids.
They were the ones that you showed us.
Yeah, it's 3 big bells and they can be really loud, which is, like I said, that's why I had to take them down, because my cat thinks that it's the dinner bell and that's not the case. Right. Now I have wind chimes up over here that they can't reach, so those stay up. So if I hear wind chimes and I know my cats can't get to it, I know I'm probably gonna die or some horrible shit. Somebody's messing with me. Oh, speaking of cats, somebody had mentioned a ghost dog for like 0.5 seconds earlier. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think I have a ghost cat in my house. My Nana's cat died in here, and we suspect that she is still around because we've had all of the animals that we've ever had are always like, they would always try to get in my room. She died in my room. She actually died literally like 2 feet from where I'm sitting right now. Anybody who stayed here has had some type of experience where, like, eyes wide open, not like sleepy at all. They're looking at the corner of the bed and there's an indentation in the bed as if the cat had just jumped up there. And they're like, oh, okay. This is another form of protection that I like to use, are my cats, because
Yep.
I believe that animals are like children and that they are more susceptible to seeing things that adults or people who are closed off to that might not be able to see. And my cat, Mister, my big boy, my big sleuth, makes it his mission. If I go downstairs, like right now, my mom is asleep, so all the lights are turned off. He won't let me go downstairs by myself. He has to go in front of me, and he won't let me come down the stairs until he's gone into the other rooms, has checked to see that it's all clear. So he'll go down in front of me and the other one will come down behind me. And it's been a thing you had mentioned, like when you said about Emily looking at the ceiling and talking to her shadow friend, this is where I have a slight problem. The way this house is just built terribly, but the stairs have this really shit ceiling that comes down, and there's like a clove. If you wanted to, you could have little messages there and no one would ever know unless they're coming down the stairs. My nieces would always sit on the steps and look up and sing and whisper and talk to somebody up there, but we would ask them and they would never have any type of answer. But all of the cats sit in the same spot and look up and yowl and try to climb up to get to whatever hangs out there. And that's where he goes. He sits in the middle of the steps and yodels. And it scares the shit out of me because he sounds like a person. It sounds like a person going, hello, hello. And I'm always like, don't, because it's always when you're like kind of like half asleep and you're like, did I just hear somebody yell hello? And it's always this asshole screaming in stairwells at like 2 a.m. at whatever is hanging out on the steps. And I noticed that there's a lot of transitional areas that they like to hang out in. And a lot of creepy crawlers like to hang out in transitional areas like doorways or steps, or if it's transitioning from like carpet to the floor, they always have to be in my path as if they're cutting that for me in order for me to move forward safely. So they've done that. I didn't teach them to do this. They just did it on their own. They've done it since they were kittens. They're always there. Like I can't go into a room unless one of them goes in before me. Like
Isn't
if I
that
get
why
up
the
and start,
Egyptians worshipped cats? Because they do stuff like that? Because they're protective and they see the other side?
they're in a lot of
Fast.
cultures considered between worlds,
Mm-hmm.
and doorways and stuff like that are betweens. You're going from one place to another. I believe I always get the Egyptian stuff mixed up. Jackal is the underworld, and then Bast and Bastet are the ones that are the cats.
Mm-hmm.
So they, besides just being generally useful for catching vermin, among other things, I think they just realized like this animal has seen some shit and will continue to see some shit, so we need to keep them around.
Yeah,
they're great conduits almost for light. They're able to translate things out of the dark for us, so that way we don't have to worry about anything. They see the stuff that we see out of the corner of our eyes and get it so that it's not there, which is why I think a lot of people like to use them as familiars as well.
Mm-hmm. We had a ghost cat when I was first married, when I was like 22. We bought our first house. I just turned 24, and I never had pets. Like my mother and my father were allergic to cats and dogs, so all we had was maybe a bird, like nothing, right? We move into this house, and it was the strangest thing because I walked down to the basement to do the laundry, and it felt like a cat just like rubbed up against my leg. And I was like, maybe there's a cat and I didn't see it. Like, I better check the basement door. Like, maybe the people who moved out abandoned a cat. Like, we need to look for this cat. Like, I think there's a cat in here. But I let it go because there's no cat, right? So you just kind of forget about it. Did the laundry, go back upstairs, went back down. I'm like, I swore I saw a cat walk across the side of the room. I'm like, this is creepy. I'm not telling anybody. They're going to think I'm nuts. My daughter's 8, right? And she's at the other end of the basement coming out of the bathroom. And I'm walking into the same, like the staircase area. And she's looking at me and I'm looking at her. And all of a sudden, a freaking cat sticks its head out from between the stair treads, looks at me, looks at her, and just gone. And I'm like, did you see that? She goes, no. And I go, what'd you see? And she goes, did you see that cat? Does it rub your legs? I'm like, ah! But after we acknowledged that we saw it, never saw it again. Never touched me, nothing. So when we redid that room, I made him dig up the entire concrete floor because I was afraid there was a cat buried there. And I wanted to like rebury it someplace sacred and like bless it. Because I felt like a cat, like to me, it was weird that the cat would be there. It was just weird. But it wasn't like at all scary until it stuck its head out and disappeared.
Yeah, no.
Up till then, it was just like kind of rubbing
like that.
You know,
Miss Kitty hangs out. She's chill. She hangs with the other cats, but this is because that's the thing is like at one point we had just had a dog. All of our other cats had passed away. So to feel that familiar, like anybody who has a cat or has been around a cat, they know what it feels like when they jump up on the bed next to you. They know what it feels like when they wrap themselves around your legs, almost tripping you and, you know, headbutting you, rubbing up against you, or like what it feels like when they want the pets and they very gently will like tap the back of your arm and you're like, don't do that. Like it was like that for quite a while until I'd gotten the 3 that I have now, and they have all had some type of interaction with her. So that's always kind of been like a calming thing, I guess. Especially for my mom. She would, cause it's one of those things where you don't really think about it until one day you're like, how you doing, Miss Kitty? And it's just like, damn, miss that cat, even though it wasn't my cat. It's just, it's one of those, like, it's kind of like a grounding thing almost.
Yeah.
Calming situation.
All right, I found something about plumbing and neg concentrations. Want to hear it?
Bring it on.
The water thing's fascinating to me. I just don't know what to think of it, right?
I like it.
So cities and towns in our modern world are heavily crisscrossed with underground plumbing. Pipes full of running water line every street and run around and through every building. Since running water has properties that repel and or demanifest negs, modern plumbing severely limits their freedom to travel and thus cause negs to become concentrated in towns and buildings. It's a really interesting theory, right?
Yeah.
Negs would naturally disperse from buildings and populated areas at a much faster and healthier rate if it were not for our underground water pipes. The larger the city or building is, and the older it is, the heavier the neg concentration within it can become. Earthbound neg types can become trapped inside city blocks or buildings. In time, old buildings can become heavily contaminated with negs, including earthbound ex-humans or ghosts from people who die there that do not move on into the hereafter. Power cables can also affect negs, as do sewers, rivers, and streams, including underground streams, lakes, and oceans. Some negs never seem to work out how to move beyond these limitations, whereas others overcome them by hitching rides with susceptible people and animals. These people and animals are used as shields to carry negs over running water and other barriers. Weird.